So we're looking at Battletech 101 skills here. I've been posting up some videos exploring the core tactics, or at least how I would begin approaching the mechs in the game of Armored Combat set. I've also been regularly posting up my favorite mechs and looking at some vehicles and ways to utilize Total Warfare. That's up on my channel. But I realized from the perspective of someone who has enjoyed Battletech for some time, there are certain aspects that I'm overlooking. There are certain aspects that I'm taking for granted because I've been playing the game and enjoying the game for so long. So in these next couple of podcasts, I want to capitalize on the momentum. With any gaming system, anytime there is a new starter set, a new box set, there is a lot of hobby excitement. And I'm feeling it, and I'm loving it. So I want to push out core tactics. You've just completed your training. You've gotten your first neuro helmet. You're plugged in, you're jacked, ready to go. Where do we even start on the table? Not only as a mech warrior, but as a mech commander. There are two threads running in every game. The individual mech that in the moment you are looking based on initiative, where am I going to move? Where am I going to shoot? What's going on? The mech warrior level. But then the top down, looking at it from the mech commander level, where are you going to move? What's the plan? What's the flow of the battle? Because what's important in Battletech, initiative, is so vital. With this idea of, if I know where you are moving and you move before I do, especially if I have two other units or two other pieces, that is how you get rear armor. That is how you get in a position where you can shoot with your weapons, and perhaps the opponent, based on the facing their mech, they can't shoot back. So understanding initiative is key. But taking things one step forward, as soon as your opponent loses a mech, that is when the tide of the game shifts. And obviously losing a light mech, possibly, well, it depends on the mission, depends on what you're playing. But if we have a standard lance of a light, two mediums, and a heavy, or a light, medium, heavy, assault, whatever combination, if you lose the light mech, yes, tactically you still have a lot on the table in terms of firepower and armor, but being down one initiative is so important, is so vital, and that makes the game that much harder to win. Now, crazy stuff happens in Battletech. A good friend of mine who is an excellent Wargamer, the very first time he plays historicals, DBA, DBN, the very first time we played Battletech, I gave him a decent amount of mechs. I took a decent amount of mechs, a mix of things. I ran up there with my Victor, and with the AC-20, blew off the head of his Enforcer. And it's like, wait, what? One shot kills me? It doesn't happen as much in Battletech, but this crazy stuff does happen that really, in my mind, simulates the fog of war, simulates the crazy stuff. I mean, you get hit in the center torso for an armor hit, on 2 snake eyes. You might still have a lot of armor on there. Roll for crit. So maybe that shock just kind of really shook your mech, or maybe that tech forgot to close one of the service ports or the ammo ports and left it open, and you got a little Death Star thing going in there, finding the core and blowing you out. Or you fall, and when you fall, you hit your head, and pilot checks and all sorts of crazy stuff in there. That makes any type of combat in Battletech where your opponent can shoot back, there is a risk factor. But taking that aside, that the crazy dice risk factor, you can control the loss of your mech. You can influence it. You can use good tactics to try and keep your stuff up as long as you can while dishing out some major pain to your opponent. So the first piece, you have your lance, you have your grouping of mechs, the units kind of going in. You need to stick together. You need to stay within, and now there's a little bit of modification here depending on the mechs and the weaponry, 2 to 3 or 4 hexes within each other. And the reason for this, think about 4 mechs from the starter set. Randomly, let's see, I'm going to pick. Okay, T-Bolt, because I love the Thunderbolt. Catapult, because it's a solid mech all around. We'll take the Wolverine, because ton for ton in the starter set, that is the best mech when you take into account of speed and weaponry, battle value, and armor. And then we'll also take, because we got to equal it out a little bit, Commando. So pretty solid lance. I like the Awesome too. Well, I like all the mechs in the starter set. So we take those 4 machines, we put them down on the table. Based on the weapon profiles, their long range, their medium weapons, and their short range, that projects out what I call a threat bubble. That's going to project out. And if you physically do this with your mechs, put them down on the Hex Map and look at the similar weapons in range bracket for all 4 of your mechs, trace that out, and then put that in that firing arc. And of course, you can move and you can torso twist and you can do that. This creates a sphere of influence, a number of hexes that you can influence. The weapons profiles of range and what they can hit will overlap for your lance. So what this means is if an opposing unit, a mech or a vehicle, if you're doing total warfare, combined arms, moves into that threat area, multiple weapons will be able, multiple weapons on multiple mechs will be able to shoot at that. And in Battletech, you want to focus your fire tremendously on one mech. I don't want to shoot a little bit at one mech, then shoot something at another mech, and then shoot something at the third mech. I want to focus what can I reasonably hit based on the stats in the moment, and I want to focus on that and take that mech down. So being able to focus, overlap, and combine is key. Now, one of the tactics we looked at briefly in the starter set, there are times, now this is kind of tabletop simulation best case. When you're down there on the table rolling dice and you've got multiple mission parameters and somebody's shooting back at you, yes, things change. Things get a little more interesting from that perspective. So there are times you will have to divide up. There are times you will break apart. When you do that based on the mission or based on what happens, when you do that, at the very least, the idea of a wingman. I want to have one mech bodyguarding or working with another mech. I want to focus, and I want to try and get my opponent down, put a mech down, put a vehicle down, and start to shift the initiative where that's where the momentum of the game really, really starts to change.